Chapter 1. The sun was beginning its slow descent, spilling molten gold over the suburban streets as Cale Donovan's SUV rolled past rows of identical brick houses. The air shimmered with leftover heat from the afternoon, and the faint smell of cut grass lingered in the warm breeze slipping in through the open windows. Inside, the soft hum of the engine was the only sound between Cale and his 12-year-old son, Noah Vale. The boy sat in the passenger's seat, his small frame swallowed by the dark seatbelt strap, his hood pulled halfway over his head. He was usually chatty after their weekend visits, rambling about video games, asking about Cale's work, sometimes begging to stop for ice cream before drop-off. But today, he was silent. Cale glanced sideways at him, one hand steady on the wheel. Noah's eyes weren't watching the scenery pass. They were fixed on a single point beyond the glass, unfocused, as though his mind was some way far away. His fingers fidgeted with the metal zipper on his hoodie, sliding it up and down in a soft, repetitive scrape that was almost drowned out by the road noise. They just crossed the intersection that meant they were 5 minutes from Sienna's house, his ex-wife, Noah's mother. Cale had driven this route 100 times since the divorce 3 years ago. Every turn, every crack in the pavement was familiar. That was why he noticed it instantly when Noah's hand shot out and gripped his forearm. The pressure startled him. Noah's knuckles were pale, his grip surprisingly strong for someone his size. "Dad," the boy's voice was soft, but not in the way of shyness or politeness. It was the soft of someone trying not to be heard by anyone but him. "Can we take a longer route?" Cale's eyes flicked to his son's face. There was something brittle in the way Noah was holding himself, his shoulders rounded forward, chin almost tucked into his chest. The boy didn't look at him. Instead, his gaze slid to the floor mat, as though the answer might be written there. A longer route. Cale tried to keep his tone light, casual. "What for?" Noah's lips parted as if he'd answer, but then his teeth clicked shut. He drew in a breath. Actually, his voice faded, the word left dangling in the air between them like an abandoned thought. Cale studied him for another second, but he'd already turned his face toward the window. In the reflected light of the glass, Cale caught the faintest shadow of an expression, worry, maybe fear. He wanted to push, but years of being a divorced dad had taught him something. Sometimes you only get one chance for an honest answer, and forcing it too soon shuts the door. The tires hummed over the asphalt as they rounded the last bend toward Sienna Street. That was when Cale saw him, Damien Voss. Damien was standing at the edge of the driveway, one hand in his jacket pocket, the other loose at his side. He was tall, with a neatly trimmed beard and the kind of broad-shouldered posture that made him seem like he was always sizing up whoever he looked at. His dark blue jacket hung perfectly straight, like it had been pressed that morning. Cale slowed the SUV to a crawl. Damien's gaze locked onto him immediately. There was no warm welcome in it, no nod of acknowledgement that said, "Glad to see you brought him home safe." It was measuring. Then, as the car rolled to a stop by the curb, Damien did something Cale had never seen him do. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. And in that same moment, Noah's fingers tightened around the fabric of his hoodie, pulling it further over his head. "Afternoon," Damien said as he stepped closer, his voice calm, almost casual. Cale kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting loosely on the gearshift. "Afternoon," he returned, watching for any sign of what this was about. Damien leaned slightly toward the open driver's side window. The faint scent of aftershave hit Cale, clean, sharp, almost clinical. Without another word, Damien slid his free hand from his pocket. In it was a plain brown envelope, thick enough that Cale could see the faint bulge against the paper. Damien placed it gently on the passenger's seat, right beside Noah's leg. "This is for you," he said. No explanation, no change in expression, just a slow pat on the car roof before he stepped back. Cale's eyes darted to Noah. The boy hadn't moved. His gaze was fixed on his lap, as though pretending none of this was happening. Damien's figure receded toward the house, the late sunlight catching on the edge of his jacket. For a heartbeat, Cale thought he saw Damien glance over his shoulder, not at him, but down the street, as if checking for something. Cale shifted the car into gear. The envelope lay untouched on the seat, the weight of it seeming to grow heavier with each second. He drove away, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror. Noah still hadn't said a word. And for the first time in years, Kale realized he wasn't just driving his son home. He was driving straight into something he didn't understand. Chapter 2. The house shrank in the rearview mirror until it was a blur of brick and glass. Kale kept his hands at 10 and 2, eyes flicking between the road and the mirror, hearing the steady tick of the blinker louder than usual in the quiet. The brown envelope lay where Damien had set it, plain, unmarked, too present. Noah hadn't moved since they pulled away. He sat folded into himself, hoodie tugged forward like a keratin. "You said a longer route," Kale said, careful with his tone. "Where do you want to go?" Noah's fingers worked the zipper tab again. Up, down, just not straight there, he murmured, still studying the floor mat. Then, barely louder than the air moving through the vents, "Please." Kale thumbed the navigation stalk and turned off onto a parallel avenue lined with maple trees and aging street lamps. Kids on scooters sliced paths across the sidewalk. A delivery truck honked once, impatient. Ordinary life kept happening around them, and somehow that made the tightness in Kale's chest worse. He eased the SUV into the slow lane, buying minutes without making it obvious he was buying minutes. He tried an easy entry point. "You forget something at my place. Controller? Jacket?" Noah shook his head, small, quick. The zipper kept up its rhythm. Kale let silence sit, hoping it might fill with something useful. It didn't. When the light turned red, he risked a glance down at the envelope. It wasn't thick, but it had a weight that didn't feel like paper, more like a card key or a small tool inside. The flap was sealed with a clean strip of tape, straight as a ruler. No handwritten name. No logo. It felt intentional. Noah cleared his throat. "Dad." "Yeah." If I told you something, would you?" He stopped. Swallowed. "Would you believe me, even if it sounded not normal?" Kale's grip eased. He kept his eyes on the crosswalk where a woman pushed a stroller, the squeak of its wheels faint through the glass. "I don't need normal. I need true." Noah's heel tapped once, twice against the rubber mat. Whatever he was reaching for, he couldn't grab it yet. The light changed. They rolled forward. Kale tried again, a different angle. "Is it about school?" "No." "Your mom?" A pause. "No." "Damien?" Noah flinched. Not big, just a quick tightening at the jaw, a blink that stayed closed half a second too long. Kale felt heat rise behind his sternum. His phone buzzed in the console. "Sienna, ETA? Dinner's in 20. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again, like she couldn't decide how worried to be. Kale typed back with one hand, kept his voice steady as he said, "Traffic's sloppy. We'll be a little late." Then, to Sienna, taking a detail. He left a binder at mine, swinging by to grab it. 3 dots. Then, "Okay. Just don't keep him out too late. He has a quiz tomorrow." Kale slipped the phone face down. He hadn't told a flat lie in years. The taste of this one was metallic. At the next intersection, a charcoal SUV idled on the opposite corner. Dark windows. Neutral look. Kale wasn't a nervous driver by temperament. He did risk assessments for a living before opening his small consultancy, and paranoia wasn't part of his toolkit. Still, when he turned right and the SUV drifted forward to turn right too, 2 blocks behind, he noticed. He logged its partial plate without thinking. He told himself it was nothing. He let the route meander past a strip mall with a laundromat and a discount pharmacy. The sun had dropped another inch. Light pooled on hoods and windshields like spilled bronze. "Want water?" he asked, nodding toward the convenience store. "We can't stop." Noah shook his head. He was stiff in a way that wasn't teenage sulk. It was more like a body bracing for impact. "Can we just keep moving?" "Sorry." The apology came fast, automatic. "Don't be sorry." Kale flicked a glance at him. "You asked for a longer route. That's what we're doing." Noah's breath fogged the lower corner of the window, a crescent that faded and returned. He pressed his thumb into it, drawing a tiny circle that vanished almost as soon as he made it. "I didn't mean to make you late," he said. "You didn't. Mom's going to be mad." "Your mom gets high blood pressure from a missing spoon," Kale said, a small smile audible in his voice. "She'll survive a detail." Noah's mouth twitched. It wasn't a smile, but it wasn't nothing, either. The charcoal SUV reappeared at the far end of the next block, then turned off into a side street. Good. Or lucky. Cale's pulse stepped down a notch. He took the long way along the river, where the road narrowed and bumped and the railing rattled when trucks passed. The water below was the color of pewter. A jogger's shoes slapped against the path in a steady metronome. Noah watched him go by as if trying to memorize the cadence. Okay, Cale said eventually, because waiting had its limits. Here's what I know. You don't want to go straight back. You asked for a longer route. Damien handed me something with a straight face and no explanation. That's 3 odd things in 5 minutes. You don't owe me a speech, but give me a direction. Noah's fingers left the zipper and gripped the fabric at his knees. He picked a seam with his thumbnail until the threads separated. If you took me to your place for like 5 minutes, he said, wary, would Mom be mad? Yes. Noah's shoulders sank. She'll also get over it, Cale added. 5 minutes is 5 minutes. Noah's head turned for the first time since they'd left the house. He looked at Cale's profile instead of the window. Can it be 10? Cale's mouth went dry. He thought of the envelope again, that too solid weight. He thought of Damien's eyes tracking the street behind them before he smiled. He thought of asking questions too early and watching doors slam shut. Yeah, he said. 10. He signaled and merged left, heading for the exit that would take them toward his apartment. The traffic thinned. The city changed shape, less bungalow, more low-rise brick and muraled corners and a bakery that always smelled like sugar at this hour. He felt Noah's posture ease by degrees, as if each block they put between themselves and Sienna's address removed a brick from the load on his back. The phone buzzed again. Sienna, what binder? He didn't bring one. He could picture her at the counter, hand on hip, eyes narrowing. He typed, Blue Math 1, left on the hall table. He realized in the car. A beat. Then he added, bringing him right after. He hit send before second thoughts could form. They turned onto Cale Street. It was quieter, a row of maples, a graffiti-tag electrical box, the thin shine of oil near the curb where the neighbor's old pickup leaked. Cale pulled into his assigned spot and cut the engine. In the sudden stillness, the ticking of the cooling motor sounded like a clock. For the first time, he picked up the envelope. It flexed slightly in his hand, corners crisp. He felt something pressed flat inside that wasn't paper. The temptation to tear it open right there in the car punched through him hard enough to lift his pulse into his throat. But Noah was watching, and whatever lay inside had the potential to explode the next 10 minutes in ways Cale wasn't ready to manage in a parked SUV with a kid staring at him. He slid the envelope under an old city map in the side pocket of the door. Out of sight, not out of mind. Come on, he said, opening his door. We'll be quick. They climbed the stairs to the second floor. Cale's building smelled like laundry detergent and someone's onion-heavy dinner. His key scraped in the lock. The apartment opened on light and the quiet clutter of a lived-in place. A pair of running shoes by the mat, a coffee mug with a ring in the bottom, a couch throw kicked half off. Noah stepped in and stood near the threshold, hands in pockets, eyes moving like he was cataloging exits. Water? Cale asked. Noah nodded. Please. Cale crossed to the kitchen, the rush of the tap loud in the small space. He set the glass on the counter within reach. Noah didn't drink. He kept his hands jammed in his pockets, shoulders high. Bathrooms down the hall if you need it, Cale offered. Noah shook his head. Can I sit? Anyway. Cale gestured to the couch. Noah perched on the edge like a bird ready to dart. Cale stood at the end of the coffee table, pretending to glance at a stack of mail while he watched Noah's face in reflection off the black TV screen. The boy's jaw was tight enough to ache. He kept looking at the door, then away, as if checking they still had time. Down in the lot, an engine rolled past with a low growl. Cale's gaze slid to the blinds. Through the narrow slats he caught a sliver of the street, and a dark shape creeping by, just slow enough to register. Hard to tell the make from that angle. Hard to tell if it meant anything. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Sienna. An unknown number. One line, no punctuation, open it where he can't see. Cale's stomach dropped a half-inch. He looked at Noah, then at the message, then at the side pocket of his car door sitting 2 stories below them like a locked box he'd left inside a larger, more fragile one. He turned the phone over on the table like that might make the message less real. 10 minutes, Noah said softly, almost as a question. 10, Cale said, and heard the decision formed fully in his own voice. He would not open anything in front of his son. He would not pretend the world wasn't tipping. He would not go back to the house until he understood what he was walking into. In the hall mirror, he caught his own reflection, jaws set, eyes a little too bright. He'd seen that look before, in men who knew something was wrong but didn't yet know the shape of it. He drew a breath, felt it all the way down, and went to get the envelope. Chapter 3. Cale descended the stairwell 2 steps at a time, his hand grazing the railing but never gripping it. Each thud of his boots on the concrete echoed in the narrow space, fast and deliberate. Outside, the late afternoon light had thinned. The edges of the world dipped in the cool blue that came before dusk. His SUV waited in the same spot he'd left it, the metal warming in the last sun. The air smelled faintly of exhaust from the sedan that had just pulled out of a space nearby. Cale's eyes swept the lot as he approached. Habit, instinct. He caught a flash of movement down at the far end, a dark vehicle turning onto the street. But it disappeared behind the hedges before he could confirm what it was. He opened the driver's side door, leaned in, and reached for the side pocket. The old city map crinkled under his fingers, and beneath it, the smooth surface of the envelope. It was cool, like it had been holding its breath since Damien had pressed it into the car. Cale straightened, closing the door quietly instead of with his usual solid push. He scanned the balconies of the opposite building. No one was out, but that didn't mean no one was watching. The unknown text still sat in his phone, the words etched into his thoughts, open it where he can't see. Back upstairs, Noah was exactly where Cale had left him, perched on the couch sedge, knees together, fingers locked in his lap. His head turned at the sound of the door, but his eyes went to the envelope in Cale's hand before they flicked away. Cale didn't speak. He crossed to the bedroom, nudged the door nearly shut, and sat on the edge of his bed. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen was a faint backdrop, paired with the muffled sound of a TV commercial leaking in from a neighbor's apartment. The envelope seal gave under his thumb with a slow tear. Inside was a single folded page and a USB drive, the metal casing scratched at the edges as though it had been carried loose in a pocket for weeks. He unfolded the paper. "Dad, please don't make me go back. Plug this in and you'll understand." The handwriting was Noah's, small, tight, and uneven where the pen had hesitated. Cale felt the air leave his lungs in a slow, measured breath. He set the note beside him and turned the USB over in his fingers. It was light but solid, the kind of cheap storage drive you could buy in a convenience store, or pick up by the dozen if you didn't want them traceable. Cale's laptop sat on the desk across the room. He powered it on, the software of the fan rising as the screen came to life. His hands hovered over the keyboard longer than he liked before sliding the USB into place. The file directory popped open. 3 folders, each one labeled only with a date, 3 separate days from the past week. No names, no titles. Cale clicked the first folder. 1 video file. He opened it. The footage was grainy, the kind of quality you'd get from a cheap hidden camera. The angle was low, pointing toward a partially open doorway. Beyond it, the whole light threw a pale rectangle into what looked like Noah's bedroom. Damien appeared in the frame, pacing back and forth in the hallway. He had a phone pressed to his ear. His voice was calm but clipped. "The shipment is ready. No one suspects the garage. The kid keeps his mouth shut, or I'll make sure he does." Cale's jaw tightened. He replayed the sentence in his head, searching for any benign interpretation. There wasn't one. He clicked the second folder. 2 files this time. The first was a shaky handheld clip, Noah's vantage point. Damien was in the garage, crouched over a patch of bare concrete near the back wall. He pried up what looked like a false floor panel, revealing a recessed space beneath. Wooden crates stacked in neat rows filled the space, each stenciled with a string of letters and numbers Cale didn't recognize immediately. The second video was shorter. Damien, at night, standing over Noah's bed. He wasn't touching the boy, just standing there, holding a phone, taking photos. The flash didn't fire. The dim light from the hallway barely caught the edge of Damien's face. He stepped back after a few seconds, glanced toward the door, and left. Cale closed the folder, the mouse clicking louder than it should have. He leaned back, staring at the wall, the details of the videos imprinting themselves in sharp relief. The crates, the tone in Damien's voice, the deliberate stillness over Noah's sleeping form. There was no doubt now. Noah had a reason for asking for the longer route. Damien had a reason for slipping him the envelope. The question was why. If Damien was the danger, why hand over evidence that painted him as one? From the living room, the floorboard near the kitchen creaked. Noah's voice followed, tentative. "Dad, is it time to go back?" Cale looked at the USB still plugged into the laptop. He ejected it, tucking it back into the envelope along with the note. "Not yet," he called back. He returned to the living room, keeping his expression neutral. "We've got a few more minutes." Noah nodded but didn't meet his eyes. His sneakers tapped a quiet rhythm on the rug. Cale's mind was already moving ahead, thinking about contacts, safe places, ways to stall the return without raising Sienna's suspicion. His phone buzzed again. "Sienna? Cale? Is something wrong?" "You're way past 20 minutes. Cale didn't answer immediately. He was looking at Noah, at the boy's hunched posture, the way his gaze kept drifting toward the door. Outside, somewhere down the block, an engine idled for a beat too long before driving away. He knew one thing for certain. Going back to that house without understanding the whole picture was no longer an option. And whatever this was, it had just moved from an uneasy feeling to a defined threat. Chapter 4. Cale slid the envelope into the inside pocket of his jacket, feeling its flat weight press against his ribs. The laptop screen had gone dark, but the images from the USB burned behind his eyes, the crates hidden under the garage floor, Damien's voice on the phone, the stillness over Noah's bed. In the living room, Noah sat where he'd been, knees drawn up a little, hands clasped tight in his lap. He looked up when Cale came in, then quickly down again. It was the kind of look that said the boy already knew Cale had seen something, but didn't want to be the first to speak. Cale kept his voice steady. "Change of plan. We're not heading straight back yet." Noah's head jerked up slightly. "We're not." No, Cale picked his words carefully. "We're going to make one stop first." The boy's shoulders eased by a fraction, but he still didn't smile. "Okay." Cale grabbed his keys and phone, sliding both into his pocket beside the envelope. Before leaving, he went to the window and parted the blinds just enough to check the street. The road looked empty, quiet, too quiet for this time of day. "Come on," he said, locking the apartment door behind them. They took the stairs down. The smell of someone's fried dinner wafted up from the first floor. Outside, the sky was shifting toward dusk, the colors muted, edges softening. Cale led Noah to the passenger side of the SUV, scanning the lot again. His gut still pulled tight with the memory of that dark SUV from earlier. They got in. Cale started the engine and eased out of the space, heading not toward Sienna's neighborhood, but away from it, toward the riverfront, where traffic thinned and buildings turned to wide stretches of industrial space. Noah watched the scenery change, silent for the first few blocks. Then, "Dad, where are we going?" "Just somewhere I can think." Noah nodded once, turning his gaze back to the window. Cale kept his eyes on the road but checked the mirrors regularly. No sign of the charcoal SUV yet. Still, every other dark-colored vehicle caught his attention. The industrial stretch by the river was quiet except for the hum of the water treatment plant and the occasional distant clank of machinery. Cale pulled into a narrow side street where the asphalt cracked under weeds and stopped near an old brick warehouse with boarded windows. He killed the engine. The silence settled over them like a blanket. The faint sound of water lapping against the dock came from somewhere nearby. "Stay here," Cale said, his tone firm but calm. Noah's eyes flicked to his. "Why?" "Because I need to make a call, and I don't want you hearing half of it and guessing the rest." Noah hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Cale stepped out, closing the door softly. He walked a short distance away, enough that his voice would carry no further than he wanted it to. Pulling out his phone, he scrolled to a number he hadn't dialed in over a year, a former colleague from his security consulting days. Someone who owed him a favor. The call connected on the third ring. "Donovan." The voice on the other end was low, wary. "Yeah, I've got a problem. Pipe. Domestic, but it's bleeding into something bigger. I've got video, shipment crates under a false floor, Markings I don't recognize. Person in the house is talking about the kid keeping quiet or else. There was a pause. Send me stills of the markings. Cale pulled the USB from his pocket, crouched beside the SUV, and used his phone to snap a picture from the laptop screen, one of the crates in the garage. He sent it. Another pause, then, that's bad. Those numbers match a shipment we've been tracking. Weapons. We thought the local node was cold. It's not, Cale said flatly. Listen, if the guy gave you this evidence, he's either burned with his own crew or using you as cover. Either way, the heat's about to spike. Keep the kid away from that house. I'll have someone meet you. Cale's jaw tightened. No cops yet. Not until I know the full layout. You've got maybe 12 hours before the people behind those crates realize the data's not where it should be. If they think you have it. I get it, Cale cut in. Send me a safe meet location. The line clicked dead. A text followed seconds later, an address in the North Industrial Park, time set for 2 hours from now. Cale slid the phone back into his pocket and returned to the SUV. Noah was watching him through the glass, his face pale in the fading light. When Cale opened the door, the boy asked, "Is it bad?" Cale got in, buckled up. "It's serious." Noah didn't press, but his fingers curled tighter in his lap. As they pulled away from the warehouse, Cale checked the mirror again. That's when he saw it, 2 blocks back, at the mouth of the side street, a dark SUV turning onto their route, slow and steady. His pulse kicked up. He kept his speed even, his posture relaxed, but his mind was already mapping exits. The game had shifted. Someone was watching, and they were no longer just playing defense. Chapter 5. Cale didn't tell Noah about the dark SUV at first. He softened his hands on the wheel, let the speed settle into the slow pulse of river traffic, and pretended to study the road signs like any father trying not to miss a turn. In the mirror, 2 blocks back, the SUV slid into view again, unhurried, never closing the gap, never falling away. Its grille looked like a clenched jaw. "Seatbelt tight?" Cale asked, voice easy. Noah checked the buckle automatically, then glanced at his father's eyes in the side mirror and seemed to read something in them. "What's wrong?" "Nothing if we're smart," Cale said. "Phone's on silent. If I say duck, duck. If I say out, you're out and you stay on my left." "Copy." Noah swallowed. "Copy." Cale took the next right, then another right a block later, then a third. 3 rights make a square. Normal drivers don't drive squares without a reason. In the mirror, the SUV appeared at the end of each new street like a shadow learning his steps. Confirmation. He exhaled once, slow, and shifted tactics. "We're going to do a stop," he said lightly. "You thirsty?" Noah nodded, though his throat had gone dry 15 minutes ago. Cale pulled into a busy convenience store lot and chose a pump beneath a camera dome. He left the engine running, stepped out, and lifted the nozzle, pretending to fill while his eyes scanned reflections. The SUV rolled past on the street and didn't turn in. Good. Then, from the far exit, a silver sedan slipped into the lot and idled near the air pump. Driver angled just enough to watch the storefront doors. 2 vehicles. Not amateurs. Cale replaced the nozzle and got back in. "Change of plan," he murmured. "They're not all outside the fence." Noah's hands tightened on his knees. "Who is?" "Later." Cale's tone brokered no argument but wasn't unkind. He eased out the back exit, not the front, and took a service alley that cut behind the strip of stores. The alley funneled into a feeder road where he could see the silver sedan creep along the outer row, nose pointed toward the alley mouth he'd just left. The driver had guessed wrong. Cale let the distance grow. He didn't run. Running invites mistakes. He threaded a path through the slow arteries of late-day traffic, then cut left into a downtown gritty new one-way streets, loading zones, short signals. The SUV reappeared 2 blocks back again. The sedan didn't show. 1 tail, maybe 2 rotating. He caught partial plates in a glance and sent them in a text to the contact who'd set the meet. 2 vehicles. Charcoal SUV, 7Q6, silver sedan, 3M2. Rotating. The reply came fast. Shell companies. Don't lead them to me. Lose them first. Another ping a second later. They'll expect you to head north. Don't. Cale turned east instead, toward a hospital complex, traffic, cameras, security. Noah watched the turn with the cautious attention of someone trying to learn a language by ear. "Are we being followed?" the boy asked, whisper small. "Yes," Cale said. He believed in truth scaled to what a child could carry. "You did the right thing asking for a longer route." Noah's jaw worked. "Is it because of—" He stopped, teeth locking on whatever name he almost said. "Because of a lot of things," Cale said. "Tell me one." He kept his tone casual, eyes on the merge. Noah stayed out the window, as if the answer might be hiding in the reflection. He started keeping the garage locked even when he was home, he said finally. He said it was contractor stuff, but there wasn't any contractor. And sometimes, at night, he'd stand outside my door and not knock. Just listen. Noah took a thin breath. And he took my phone once and checked if I had downloaded anything new. He didn't get mad. He just said, "No surprises, like a rule." The light turned green. Cale took them into the hospital loop, then out again via a different exit, letting a line of cars wedge between him and the SUV. "When did you film the garage?" he asked. "The night he forgot to lock it," Noah said. He was on the phone whispering and didn't see me. "A beat. I used Mom's old tablet because my phone storage was full. I hid the tablet under my bed after." "Did he ever mention me when he was on those calls?" Noah shook his head, then hesitated. He said, "No one suspects the garage, and the kid keeps his mouth shut, like in the video. And once he said, Thursday by 8 or the window closes, but I don't know what that was." Foreshadowing slid into place like a quiet click. Thursday. Tonight was Wednesday. 12 hours. Cale adjusted their timeline in his head without letting panic anywhere near his face. He angled east again and put the city's oldest parking structure between them and the SUV, the kind with double helixes of concrete and a second pedestrian exit that fed a different street. He took a ticket at the arm, then, inside the dim ramps, cut his lights a beat to watch who followed. Tires squealed faintly below, a car entering. He didn't wait. Up one level, down a side lane, through a low-ceilinged aisle of parked sedans that smelled like oil and warm brake pads. Then out the pedestrian exit on foot with Noah, hustling down the stairwell to street level. "Left," he said, and Noah stayed on his left like he'd promised. They came out on a quiet block by a row of print shops shuttering for the night. Cale led them 2 storefronts down to a different garage entrance, pressed the pedestrian call button. When a tenant opened from the inside to leave, Cale slipped them through and back into the garage at a different level, walked fast to the sub's twin, a black crossover with a dented bumper, and ducked behind it to watch. Below, on the entry ramp, the charcoal SUV eased up a level. A man got out near the pay machine, pretended to check a tire while his partner scanned up the ramp. They weren't rushing. They were listening. Cale touched Noah's sleeve and they moved. A jog down the internal ramp to Cale's level. He unlocked with a soft beep, slid them in, and drove straight for a different exit that spat them onto an alley on the far side of the block. He didn't breathe until they were 3 intersections away. Noah watched him, pale but holding. "Did we lose them?" "Maybe one," Cale said. "If they're good, there's another net." Noah nodded like he understood nets. They rode in silence for a minute, the city changing textures from dense to residential again. A fast food place glowed at a corner, neon buzzing. Cale pulled through the drive-thru, ordered 2 waters without looking at the menu, and idled where he could see both the street and the lot's far exit in the mirrors. He wasn't thirsty. He needed the pause to think in the open. His phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Don't bring him back. Find the tracker. Cale's scalp prickled. He typed back a single word. Where? No reply. He stared at the message a second longer, then handed Noah the waters and pulled into the self-serve bay of a car wash, the kind with a hose reel and a change machine that spit out quarters like dull coins. He parked with the rear end out. "I need 2 minutes," he said. Eyes on the mouth of the bay. "If you see the charcoal SUV or the silver sedan, say blue." "Not there here." "Blue," Noah repeated. Cale crouched by the rear wheel well, fingers sweeping the lip where plastic met metal. Cold grit stained his fingertips. Nothing. He slid further under, shoulders picking up the damp dust of old soap. There, a coin-sized puck tucked up behind the spring perch, matte black, magnet strong. Small VHB tape tab peeking like a tongue where someone had hurried the job. He eased it free with a slow twist. Noah's voice carried soft from the driver's seat. Blue. Cale pocketed the tracker without looking, stood, and stepped to the edge of the bay as if considering a rinse. The charcoal SUV rolled by the mouth, slow, like a fisherman dragging a line across water he knew held something. The driver didn't look in. The second car didn't appear. Cale walked to the trash barrel, galvanized steel, and dropped the tracker inside. Metal as a Faraday cage might buy them time. He fed the wash machine 2 quarters, grabbed the hose, and misted the bumper as a cover. When he got back in, Noah's breath came a little faster, but his hands were steady. What was that? The boy asked. Something that makes a phone somewhere very happy, Cale said. Not anymore. They pulled back onto the road. The SUV was gone for the moment. Cale took 3 random turns, then one intentional one that aimed them west, the opposite of the meet. He would loop back later, blind, clean. Dad, Noah said, voice small. I left the note in the envelope, but I didn't put the USB in. He did. Cale kept his eyes on the road. Damien. Noah nodded. He found the tablet under my bed last week. I thought he'd yell or, I don't know, but he just stayed at it and asked if I told you. I said no. He said, good. Then he took the tablet and later he gave me the USB and said, if you ever get the chance, give this to your dad. Not your mom. He looked scared. I've never seen him scared. A small hinge turned in Cale's mind. The envelope at the curb. The glance down the street. The wave that didn't reach his eyes. The unknown text that felt like both warning and instruction. The man he thought was a wolf might have been standing between the pack and the door, and doing a bad job of it. Another message pinged from his contact. If you shook them, go south on Elm, cut through Braddock, then take 9th back north. Park 2 blocks from the meet and come on foot. A second line followed. If you didn't, abort and call me. Cale looked at the clock. 90 minutes to the meet. He imagined net squares tightening and chose his square. He took Elm. The road narrowed under old elms whose branches knitted a tunnel of leaves. He felt, for the first time that evening, the faintest lift in the air pressure around them. No eyes pressing in from behind. No grill filling the mirror. He kept his speed honest, signaled every turn like a man with nothing to hide. Only when they hit 9th did he let himself say, we've got some room. He glanced at Noah. You hungry? Noah stayed at the water cup as if he'd forgotten it existed. Not really. Me neither, Cale said. But we might eat when we get where we're going. It's easier to be brave on a full stomach. Noah's mouth tugged toward a smile and didn't quite make it. Where are we going? A place with more eyes than theirs, Cale said. And people who don't spook easy. They drove on, the city folding open ahead of them like a map, and behind them, for now, only ordinary traffic, only ordinary shadows. The envelope pressed a small, steady weight against Cale's ribs, and the clock at the dash ticked them toward whatever waited in the North Industrial Park, clean or not, true or not, ready or not. Chapter 6. The road into the North Industrial Park was a patchwork of cracked asphalt and old oil stains, flanked by warehouses whose signs were faded to ghosts. Sodium lamps flickered on as twilight deepened, casting yellow halos on rusted chain-link fences. The hum of distant machinery was the only sound besides the low growl of Cale's SUV. He turned onto Braddock Street, counting the cross streets like stepping stones toward the meet location his contact had sent. The place was buried deep in the industrial maze, a windowless storage facility that didn't appear on commercial maps. Cale knew the type, a shell business, the kind used when you wanted security without visibility. 2 blocks from the coordinates, he eased into a dimly lit side street and found a spot between 2 delivery vans. The van sides bore different company names, but the matching rust on the rear panels told him they hadn't moved in weeks. He killed the engine. This is where we park, Cale said, keeping his voice calm but deliberate. Noah looked around at the empty street, unease flickering in his eyes. We? Going inside one of those. Not you, Cale said. We're meeting someone first, then we decide what's next. You stay close. You don't speak unless I tell you. And if I say go, you go. Noah nodded, lips pressed together. Cale stepped out, scanning both ends of the street. No movement, no tail in sight. He rounded to Noah's side, opened the door quietly, and motioned for him to follow. The boy stayed close as they crossed into the shadow between the vans, then headed toward the main street on foot. The storage facility loomed ahead, a squat rectangle of concrete with a single steel door under a buzzing light. The building's face was blank except for a small keypad and an old security camera whose lens reflected the lamplight. Cale's contact was waiting just inside the halo of the light. The man was tall, lean, wearing a dark jacket zipped to the throat. His hair was cropped close, and the sharpness in his eyes hadn't dulled since their last job together. "Donovan," he greeted, voice low. His gaze flicked to Noah, then back. "That him?" Cale nodded. "He's the reason we're here." The man glanced at the street behind them. "You shake your company." "For now." "Good." Inside. He keyed a code into the pad. The door buzzed, and he pulled it open. They stepped into a narrow corridor that smelled faintly of machine oil and dust. Overhead fluorescents hummed, and the walls were bare except for a few peeling signs warning about surveillance. At the far end was a small office with blinds drawn across the window. The man led them in, closed the door, and locked it. The office was sparse: a desk, 2 folding chairs, and a portable monitor on a steel cart. On the desk sat a laptop, already open to a blank desktop. "Show me," the contact said. Cale pulled the envelope from his jacket, slid the USB across the desk. The man picked it up, examining it like it might bite, then plugged it into the laptop. Folders appeared instantly. He clicked through them, opening one video after another. Cale watched his face for reaction. The man's expression barely shifted, but when he reached the garage footage, his jaw set hard. These markings, yeah, that's them. And this was taken when? Within the last week, Cale said. The man exhaled through his nose. The window he mentioned, Thursday by 8, that's a shipment pickup. If they are still sitting on it, they're behind schedule, which means someone's already asking why. Noah shifted in his chair. "They're going to come to the house." Both men looked at him. Cale answered first. "That's why we're not going back tonight." The man leaned back, crossing his arms. "You're right not to. If the crew thinks your stepdad's compromised, they won't wait for explanations. They'll clean the scene, fast." "By clean," Noah said quietly, "you mean?" Cale cut in. "He means we don't want to be there when they arrive." The contact turned back to Cale. "This Damien, is he in or out?" "That's the question," Cale said. "He gave me the envelope. Noah says Damien added the USB himself. If he's playing me, he's doing it in a way that puts him in the line of fire, too." The man's gaze narrowed. "Then either he's trying to hand you a lifeline, or he's setting you up as the scapegoat. We don't have the luxury of assuming the first." Cale felt Noah's eyes on him. "So what's the play?" "Play is," the man said, "you disappear for 48 hours. I'll feed the footage to the right people without tying it to you. We'll track the crates from the other end." "And Damien?" Cale asked. "If he survives the next 2 days, we can talk to him. If he doesn't," the man's shrug was a small, hard thing. "That tells us the answer." Noah swallowed, glancing down at the floor. Cale rested a hand briefly on his shoulder. "Where?" "There's a safe apartment across the river. 3rd floor, rear unit. Keys are in the mailbox, taped under the flap. No names, no IDs. Keep the lights low, keep the car out of sight." Cale nodded slowly. "And if the tail finds us?" The man's voice stayed level. "Then you know you didn't shake them after all." A faint thump from the corridor made all 3 heads turn. The sound was small, just a weight settling against the wall, but Cale's muscles tightened. The contact crossed to the blinds and peeled back one corner. The yellow halo of the street lamp outside lit the side of his face. "We've got company." Cale was already moving toward Noah. "Stay behind me." "How many?" he asked the contact. 2. One on each side of the street. No vehicle in sight. They came on foot, Cale said, his mind already working through the angles. The man stepped back from the blinds. "Time to go. Back door leads to the loading bay. You've got 30 seconds before they are at the front." Cale grabbed the envelope from the desk, shoved it back into his jacket. "Let's move." They slipped out into a dim rear hallway, the contact locking the office behind them. The air here was cooler, carrying the faint metallic tang of the loading docks. At the far end, a steel door opened to the bay, where stacks of empty pallets leaned against the walls. Cale ushered Noah ahead, his eyes on the shadows outside. Somewhere out there, footsteps were closing in, the sound muffled on asphalt. The contact moved to the far end of the bay, scanning the street beyond. "Clear to the left," he called softly. "Right's blocked." Cale led Noah left, sticking close to the wall until they reached the mouth of the alley. Beyond it, a row of parked trucks created a jagged line of cover. He guided Noah between two of them, the scent of diesel heavy in the air. A voice called from the street behind, "Sharp, too close." Cale didn't look back. He just tightened his grip on Noah's shoulder and pushed them deeper into the shadowed line of trucks. Somewhere ahead, the contact's voice cut through the night. "Go." And then they were running. Chapter 7. The instant the word "go" hit the air, Cale's body moved on instinct. He gripped Noah's wrist, not painfully, but firm enough that the boy wouldn't slip free in panic, and pulled him between the shadows of the parked trucks. The air here was thick with diesel and the ghost of hot brakes, the ground littered with gravel that crunched too loudly under their feet. Behind them, the sharp bark of footsteps hit the asphalt, quick and deliberate. Whoever was following wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. Cale angled toward the far end of the truck line, keeping low. "Stay close to my left side," he murmured to Noah without looking down. The boy nodded, breath already quick. The contact was 30 feet ahead, his silhouette darting across an open patch toward the next row of containers stacked 3 high. He was fast, but he wasn't sprinting, fast enough to make ground, slow enough to keep their group together. A voice shouted from behind them, low but urgent. "Stop. You don't want this to get messy." Cale didn't waste breath answering. Talking was for people who had something to negotiate. Right now, they had nothing but time to steal and distance to make. They reached the end of the trucks. Beyond, a loading ramp led to a warehouse door half rolled up. Inside, faint light leaked out, dim security lighting casting long stripes across the concrete. The contact glanced back, motioning them inside. Cale pushed Noah ahead of him, stepping through the opening into the cool, cavernous space. The smell of sawdust and cardboard hung in the air, and the sound of the street muffled instantly behind the metal walls. "Straight through. There's another exit," the contact said, already moving toward a narrow hallway at the far side. But they'd only made it halfway across when a metallic clang rang out to their right, another door opening. Cale's eyes snapped to the movement. 2 figures slipped in, both dressed in dark jackets, both wearing ball caps low over their faces. They didn't shout this time. They just started moving in, slow and controlled, like they had all the angles covered. Cale shifted his stance, putting himself squarely between them and Noah. "Left," he said, low and sharp. The contact didn't hesitate. He veered left, angling toward a stack of tall shelving that created a narrow gap at the wall. Cale guided Noah that way, their footsteps echoing in the wide space. One of the men in dark jackets called out, "You're making this harder than it has to be, Donovan." The name hit Cale's ears like a challenge. He didn't look back. "Keep moving," he told Noah. They reached the shelving. The gap was barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, but it opened into a service corridor. The air here was warmer, close, smelling faintly of machine oil. Cale shoved the door shut behind them, the metal ringing in the confined space. "This way," the contact said, leading them to a narrow staircase that climbed sharply. The steps groaned under their weight, but they climbed fast, the sound of pursuit muted but still there, echoing faintly through the door they'd just come through. At the top, the corridor ended in another steel door with a push bar. The contact hit it with his shoulder, and they spilled out onto a grated catwalk running the length of the building side. The night air hit them, cool, with the faint tang of the river. Below, the alley stretched toward the distant glow of a main road. 2 stories down, a dumpster sat beneath the catwalk, flanked by a row of empty pallets. The contact pointed, "Down and out. I'll cover the top." Cale didn't argue. He grabbed the ladder bolted to the catwalk side and started down, Noah just above him. The metal rungs were slick with condensation, and he kept one steadying hand under Noah's foot each step. Halfway down, a voice shouted from the catwalk, "Hey!" A scuffle followed. Boots on metal, a grunt, the heavy clang of someone hitting the railing. "Move!" Cale urged, and Noah hit the ground running. Cale dropped the last few feet, knees bending to absorb the impact, then caught up to his son. They darted toward the end of the alley. A chain-link gate stood there, padlock hanging open like someone had been through recently. Cale shoved it wide, the hinges squealing, and they spilled onto a side street lined with shuttered storefronts. "Which way?" Noah asked, breathless. Cale skinned quickly. To the left, the street ended in a blind T-intersection. To the right, it sloped gently downhill toward the glow of street lamps and the distant sound of traffic. "Right," he decided. They jogged that way, Cale keeping one hand lightly at Noah's back to guide him. He glanced over his shoulder once and caught movement at the mouth of the alley. Two shapes slipping out, one holding something small and dark in his hand. A siren wailed somewhere blocks away, rising and falling. The figures paused, then retreated back toward the alley. Cale didn't wait to find out why. He and Noah pushed forward until the side street met the busier road. A battered yellow cab rolled to a stop at the light. Cale waved it down, pulling the door open before the driver could even ask. "Downtown, near the East Bridge. Fast as you can." The driver, a wiry man with a tired face, just nodded and pulled away from the curb. Cale kept his head low, scanning the mirrors. Noah leaned close, voice barely above the hum of the engine. "Were they after me? Or you?" Cale's eyes stayed on the dark streets passing outside. "Doesn't matter," he said. "They don't get either of us." The cab weaved through traffic, heading for the bridge. Behind them, the industrial park faded into shadow, but the echo of boots on concrete and the clang of the catwalk stayed sharp in Cale's mind. Whatever was in those crates, whatever Damien was tangled in, it had just stopped being a secret war. And now, it was right on their heels. Chapter 8. The cab's heater breathed a low, steady warmth that fogged the corners of the windows. Sodium lights fell in amber bands across Noah's face as the taxi slid toward the East Bridge. The driver's eyes kept flicking to the rear view, curious, then retreating behind the glassy calm of someone paid to look and not ask. Cale watched the mirrors too. Nothing obvious behind them, just ordinary commuters, a delivery van with a loose panel that rattled like an empty can. The industrial park had collapsed into distance and dark. His phone vibrated. Not a call. 3 short pulses. His contact. "You clear?" Cale typed with his thumb, keeping his voice level for Noah. "Clear for now. You?" "A beat. Dust off. Office burned." They swept front and back. "I'm dark for an hour. Don't go home." Another bubble queued, then arrived. "Kid safe?" Cale glanced at Noah, who held the water cup between both hands as if it could keep them steady. "With me." Before the next message came, the unknown number flashed up again. No name, no punctuation. "Don't cross the East Bridge. Cameras flagged your plate. Take lower underpass. Hats for both." Cale's brows edged together. He hadn't told anyone about the bridge. He hadn't told anyone he still had the SUV, either, and yet the warning about the plate tugged at a logic that made his teeth clench. Whoever this was, they saw pieces no one else did. He leaned forward. "Hey, can we take Riverfront instead?" he asked the driver, casual. "Underpass route." "Construction that way," the driver said, but his voice had the resigned cadence of someone who'd take a detour for the right fare. "Might be slow. We're not in a rush." Cale slid a folded bill up beside the meter. The driver took the turn at the next light without protest. Noah angled closer, whisper small. "Who keeps texting you?" "Someone who doesn't want us on cameras," Cale said. Truth scaled to what a child could carry. "We listen until they are wrong." The cab drifted under the iron ribs of the bridge. The river rose on their right, black as slate. On the left, a service road ran past a gas station and a 24-hour convenience store with a flickering O in its open sign. Cale tapped the driver's shoulder. "Pull into the station, please." They rolled under the canopy lights. Cale paid, overtipped, and said, "Give us 5 if you can. If not, you were never here." The driver nodded. "Never saw you." He watched them step out and then stared straight ahead at the pumps like a man practicing not remembering. Inside the convenience store, the air was bright and cold. Cale walked straight to a display of cheap ball caps and beanies, grabbed 2 plain ones, black for him, gray for Noah, then snagged a pair of discount hoodies from a rotating rack. At the counter, he added a pack of gum and 2 granola bars that crinkled in their wrappers like paper lies. Back outside, he handed Noah the beanie and hoodie. "On," he said. "Hood up." Noah pulled them on without arguing. The beanie tugged his hair down over his ears. The hoodie swallowed his small shoulders. He suddenly looked less like a kid from a suburban drop-off and more like any boy at a bus stop at dusk. Cale guided him along the edge of the lot toward the stair that dropped to the Riverwalk. "New rules," he said softly as their footsteps echoed. "You stay on my left. If I say blue, you say nothing and drop behind the closest cover. If I say mercy, you run to people, any people, and you yell your name and call 911. If you ever hear me say, 'Tell Aunt Lee hi,' it means I'm not okay and we do the opposite of whatever I just said. Copy?" Noah's throat whacked. "Copy. What if there's no Aunt Lee?" "There isn't," Cale said. "That's why it works." They reached the Riverwalk. The underpass hummed with the dull, endless sound of tires above. Wind carried the iron smell of water and a sour hint of algae. Across the river, the city's far bank glowed in a low smear of light. They walked with normal steps, not too fast, not too together. A cyclist rattled by. A couple in coats moved past, arguing softly about a dog sitter. Normal, normal, normal. Cale's phone vibrated again, his contact this time. Safe app still good. Arrive side entrance on lock. Cameras are dead there. Power phones down 1 block before. Then another message arrived from the unknown number, immediately after, as if an answer. "Do not bring the kid through the front stay. Back stay only. 3rd floor landing creaks. Skip it." Cale stayed at the screen. He could feel the shape of the decision like a weight in his palm. The contact had never steered him wrong. The unknown voice had already saved them from the bridge and the tracker. "Who is it?" Noah asked, reading his father's face. "Someone who knows the building better than we do," Cale said. He powered the phone down and slid it into an inside pocket where his chest heat might blur it on any stray camera. They cut up from the river at the next stair and onto Lark Street, which looked like every other row of old brick in the district. Iron railings, 3 steps up, mailboxes with peeling unit numbers, a potted plant someone had forgotten to water into winter. Shadows were deep between the street lamps. A bus hissed to a stop 2 blocks away. Cale paused at the corner, listened, watched. No footsteps too regular, no repeated face, no grill idling where it shouldn't. He nodded them forward. The side entrance was exactly where the contact had said it would be, down a narrow cement path, behind a chain-link gate with a latch you could work from the outside if you knew where to press. Cale worked it. The gate clacked softly. They slipped through. 2 doors, one to the front stairwell, one to the service stair. Cale chose the back. The air inside smelled like damp concrete and old paint. He placed his foot on the edge of each step, testing for squeaks. On the 3rd floor landing, he stepped over the cracked tile automatically, as if the unknown text had planted a memory in his muscles. They reached 3R. No name on the door. Mail slot taped shut. Cale ran his finger under the mailbox flap to the right. Felt tape. Peeled. A key swung down on twine, knocking the metal with a light, betraying chime. He froze. In the silence that followed, he counted 1, 2, 3 heartbeats. No footfalls. No whisper of denim on plaster. He eased the key off the twine and slid it into the lock. The door gave with a tired sigh. Inside, a rectangle of a room with a pull-out couch, a cheap table, a kitchenette with a humming mini fridge. Blinds down. No photos. No books. The kind of place that existed only to be slept in and forgotten. Cale stepped in first, scanned corners, checked the bathroom, a clean ring in the tub, 2 folded towels that had never seen water. He checked the bedroom, just a mattress and a blanket and a vacuum seal on top. Unrolled, the blanket breathed out plastic and nothingness. "Close it," he said, and Noah eased the door shut behind them, as quiet as a breath. Only then did Cale let himself exhale. The quiet felt wrong. Not unsafe, just temporary, like a held note. Noah sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between his knees, eyes following Cale as if movement might break the spell. "Are we sleeping here?" "For tonight," Cale said. He checked the window locks, then drew the blinds only halfway, enough to catch shadows that didn't belong. He placed the envelope on the table. It made the lightest sound, and still it seemed to thud. "Can I?" Noah started, then stopped. "Never mind." "What?" Noah's mouth flattened, then he chose. "He told me not to give the USB to Mom," he said. "He said, only your father. He'll know what to do." He didn't look mean when he said it. He looked like when someone is underwater and trying to talk. Cale leaned a knuckle on the table. When did he say that? The night he changed the garage code. He said, "No surprises again," like a rule. Then he gave me the drive and said if I ever felt scared, I should ask you for extra time on the ride. He said you'd understand. A longer route. A coded plea. The shape of what Damien had done reassembled itself under a new light. A man who had made terrible choices, leaving breadcrumbs in the only place they wouldn't be swept away. A child's routine. Cale's phone stayed dark in his pocket. The city outside shifted deeper into night. "What happens now?" Noah asked, voice small. "Now," Cale said, "you eat one of those bars, drink water, and sleep. Shoes near the couch. Hoodie within reach. If I wake you, you don't ask why until we're in the stairwell." Noah nodded. He didn't reach for the bar. He stared at it until his eyes blurred, then blinked hard and unwrapped it. Cale stood at the window, watching the slice of street the blinds allowed, patience settling into his bones like an old coat. Some way across town, men were asking questions about missed shipments and silent phones. Somewhere closer, a contact had burned an office for their sake and gone dark. Somewhere between those lines, a man named Damien Voss had decided the only safe messenger he had was the boy he'd been pretending not to care about. Cale clicked off the main light and left the kitchen strip to glow like a lighthouse 2 rooms away. He sat in the dark and let the quiet stretch. An hour later, the phone buzzed once in his pocket, no vibration from a powered-down device. He drew it out. The screen was black. The buzz came again, a low sound, not electronic at all. Not a phone. The mail slot. Cale was at the door in 3 silent steps. He crouched, eyes level with the brass. A thin paper edge showed, just inside the flap. He stayed there long enough to count 10 slow breaths, then used a pen to lever it up and snag the paper without exposing fingers. He unfolded it under the kitchen strip. Block letters, a hand trained to print clean under pressure. Don't trust badges. 8 a.m. is for the house. 6 a.m. is for the garage. Move him before either. No signature. No scent. Just ink, paper, and a clock that started ticking louder in Cale's head. He looked over at the couch. Noah was curled under the gray hoodie, arms pinning the blanket at his chest like a life jacket. In sleep he looked younger, cheeks smoothing into childhood for one more hour. Cale folded the note once, then again, and slid it into the envelope beside the USB. The night outside felt narrower, the hours between now and dawn a corridor with no exits and 2 doors at the end. He set his watch to vibrate at 5. On the blinds, a passing shadow cut the light in half, then vanished. They had 8 hours to stay invisible. They had 3 to decide where to be when the city woke. And somewhere between those numbers, a choice waited that would turn their slow-burn flight into a sprint straight at the truth. Chapter 9. Cale didn't sleep. He sat in the single chair by the window, angled so he could see both the street through the slatted blinds and the faint rise and fall of Noah's breathing on the couch. The blanket was pulled up to the boy's chin, the hoodie's hood still in place, and his sneakers rested neatly side by side within arm's reach, just as Cale had told him. Outside, Lark Street was quiet. Too quiet. In a city this size, even industrial districts didn't stay still for long. A distant hum of tires came and went. Somewhere further off, a train's horn bled through the night air. But on their block, nothing moved except the slow rotation of a security light from the building across the way, casting a pale sweep along the cracked sidewalk. The paper note from the mail slot lay on the table beside the envelope. Cale had read it enough times to memorize it. Don't trust badges. 8 a.m. is for the house. 6 a.m. is for the garage. Move him before either. The words sat in his head like weights. 6 a.m., 3 hours before any supposed raid on the house. Whoever wrote it knew specifics, down to the minute. And don't trust badges meant law enforcement wasn't a safe play. That narrowed his options to people he knew personally, and those were in short supply. At 4:15, Cale's phone, still powered down, rested in his palm. He didn't dare turn it on, but in the quiet, he made his decision. The safe apartment had served its purpose, but staying here past dawn was inviting a corner they couldn't fight their way out of. He rose quietly and crossed to the couch. "Noah," he said softly, just above a whisper. Noah stirred, his eyes blinking open, slow with sleep. "Is it morning?" "Not yet. Time to move." The boy sat up, rubbing at his face. "It's still dark. That's why we're moving now." Cale handed him his sneakers. "Shoes on. Keep the hoodie up." While Noah laced up, Cale rolled the blanket and shoved it into a corner, wiping away any sign they'd been there. He slipped the envelope with the USB and note into his jacket's inner pocket, pressing it flat. Every few seconds, he paused and listened, for footsteps in the hall, for voices outside, for anything out of place. By 4:23, they were in the service stairwell, descending in silence. Cale kept one hand free, brushing the wall to keep balance. The metal steps groaned in the cold, but not enough to echo. At the ground floor, he crouched low and peered through the crack in the door to the alley. 2 buildings down, a figure in a hooded jacket leaned against a dumpster, hands buried in his pockets. He wasn't smoking. He wasn't scrolling a phone. He was just waiting. Cale shut the stairwell door without a sound and motioned Noah back up one flight. "Change of exit," he murmured. "Why?" Noah whispered. "Guy outside. Could be nothing, but I don't believe in nothing." They went up to the second floor and slipped into the main corridor. At the far end, the front stairwell dropped toward the building's lobby. It wasn't ideal. It had more exposure, but the street out front fed into a 3-way intersection with multiple exits. If they could make it into the morning traffic before the watcher in the alley noticed, they'd gain time. On the first floor landing, Cale stopped again and scanned through the narrow glass beside the door. The street was empty except for a lone delivery truck parked near the corner, hazard lights flashing. The driver's seat looked empty. Cale stepped into the lobby, Noah shadowing his left side. His hand stayed loose near the weight of the folding knife in his jacket pocket, not because he planned to use it, but because readiness was a habit he couldn't unlearn. They pushed through the front door and into the cool pre-dawn air. The delivery truck's blinkers clicked like a metronome. Cale guided Noah past it, keeping to the shadowed side of the street. At the intersection, he took the downhill street toward the river, lower ground, fewer sightlines. Half a block in, movement rippled in the reflection of a shop window to his right. Cale didn't turn his head. A figure had stepped out from between 2 buildings behind them, same build as the alley watcher. "Blue," Cale said quietly. Noah shifted instantly, stepping closer to the wall as Cale slowed their pace. The watcher didn't close in fast. He kept a steady, matching distance, like a predator confident in its stamina. Ahead, the street curved toward the Riverwalk. On the far side of the curve was a row of decommissioned warehouse offices, their glass doors plastered with faded for-lease signs. Cale scanned quickly. Third door down had a broken lock plate, the metal hanging loose. He steered Noah toward it. The boy didn't question, just followed. They slipped inside, the stale air of an unused space wrapping around them. Cale pulled the door mostly shut but didn't latch it. Better to leave it looking untouched. From the corner of the dark room, he watched through the narrow gap. The watcher reached the curve and slowed, scanning the street. He looked toward the warehouses but didn't cross. After a moment, he turned and walked back the way he'd come. Noah exhaled. Was he? "Yes," Cale said. "And now he knows we're not going toward the bridge." Noah's eyes flickered to the window. "So where are we going?" Cale adjusted the strap of his jacket, feeling the envelope press against him again. "Somewhere they won't expect. And before 6, we're going to see what Damien's been hiding in that garage." The boy's eyes widened. "At Mom's?" "Yes, but not by the front door. And not without knowing our exits." They waited another minute, listening for footsteps, engines, any change in the quiet. Then Cale led Noah out the back of the warehouse, into a service alley that fed onto a side street. By 4:50, they'd melted into the scattered early traffic, delivery vans, a few tired commuters, the occasional taxi. Cale kept them moving, always with another turn ahead, always with one eye on the clock. Somewhere, in a neat suburban driveway, the garage waited. And whatever lay under its false floor was more than just evidence. It was the reason every shadow in the city seemed to be leaning their way. Chapter 10. The first light of dawn was nothing more than a thin gray wash, the kind that softened edges without bringing warmth. Cale kept the SUV crawling along the quieter feeder road towards Sienna's neighborhood, its tires humming against the cold asphalt. Every few blocks, he checked the mirrors, not just for the familiar dark SUV, but for anything that appeared twice. The dashboard clock read 5:42 a.m. 18 minutes until the note's warning about the garage. Noah sat low in the seat beside him, hood up, eyes fixed on the road ahead. He hadn't spoken much since they left the warehouse district. Cale could feel the boys' questions pressing at the air between them, but neither of them could afford a conversation now. "Remember what I said," Cale murmured, turning the wheel toward an older cut-through road lined with bare sycamores. "Stay on my left. Keep your ears open more than your mouth." "I know," Noah said quietly. The houses here were still sleeping. Curtains drawn, driveways empty or with one frost-dulled car. A single jogger in a reflective vest moved along the opposite sidewalk, head down, earbuds in, gone in seconds. Cale avoided the main entrance to Sienna's street, looping instead through a side lane that ran parallel to the backs of the properties. It was narrower, lined with old wooden fences and the occasional trash bin tipped on its side. From here, he could count the houses to his without ever passing the front windows. They stopped 3 back from Damien's garage. The driveway and front yard were out of sight, but the garage itself rose above the fence line. Dark, still, the big door down. Cale killed the engine. "Out," he said softly. They slipped into the Chile. Cale kept his voice low as they walked along the fence. "If you see anyone, coming from either end, you say blue, and don't wait for me to ask why." "Got it." At the back corner of Sienna's property, the fence was weathered enough that the boards had loosened near the bottom. Cale knelt, pressing on one until it bowed outward with a quiet creak. He slid through first, then reached back to guide Noah in after him. The backyard smelled faintly of wet earth and the ghost of last night's rain. The grass was damp under their shoes. A single motion sensor light was mounted above the back door, but it was pointed toward the house, not the garage. They crossed quickly to the side path. The garage loomed ahead, detached, with a narrow side door that Cale had noticed months ago but never had reason to try. He crouched beside it now, running his fingers over the lock. Standard keyed entry. He slid a small leather case from his jacket pocket, unzipping it to reveal a set of slim picks and tension wrenches. Years in security consulting had taught him more than just how to secure a door. Noah watched from the corner of the wall. "You can pick locks," he whispered. Cale didn't look up. "I can open them faster than finding the right key." It took under a minute. The lock gave with a muted click, and Cale eased the door open, pausing to listen. No hum of machinery inside, no voices. The garage smelled of oil, dust, and something sharper, metallic. Light from the small, high windows fell in pale beams across the concrete floor. At first glance, it looked ordinary, a workbench lined with tools, a few cardboard boxes stacked against the wall. Cale stepped inside, motioning Noah to follow and closed the door behind them. He moved straight to the back, where the floor near the right wall had a faint, almost imperceptible seam. "This is it," Noah whispered, eyes wide. "This is it." Cale crouched, finding the recessed handle flush with the concrete. It resisted at first, but with a sharp tug, it lifted, revealing the false floor panel Damien had been seen moving in the video. Beneath was a cavity just deep enough for 2 stacked layers of crates. Wooden, stamped with stenciled codes, the same markings Cale had seen on the USB footage. He could feel the cold radiating from the steel brackets that reinforced them. He brushed dust from one crate, tracing the code with his fingertip. "Same shipment," he murmured. "What's in them?" Cale didn't answer immediately. He tested the crate's lid, nailed and strapped. He didn't have time to pry it open without leaving evidence of tampering. Weapons, he said finally. The kind people kill to protect. Noah's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Cale lowered the panel carefully, pressing it back into place until it sat flush again. He'd seen enough to confirm the note's urgency. Someone would be here in less than 20 minutes. And when they came, they wouldn't care who else was standing in the way. A sound cut through the stillness, distant, but distinct. A car door closing. Cale froze, eyes on Noah. "Blue," he mouthed. They moved to the side door, Cale cracking it open just enough to see the driveway. A dark sedan had pulled up at the curb, 2 men stepping out. Both wore plain jackets, both scanning the street like they were taking inventory. One had a clipboard, a prop Cale had seen used in more than one nothing-to-see-here operation. They weren't neighbors, and they weren't here to ask directions. Cale shut the door silently, turning back to Noah. Change of exit. Back fence again. Fast. They retraced their steps to the backyard. Cale's hand steady on Noah's shoulder. As they reached the fence, voices carried faintly from the driveway. Closer now, the words too muffled to make out but the tone unmistakably businesslike. Cale boosted Noah through the loose board first, then slipped out after him, easing the plank back into place. They stayed low, moving 2 houses down before straightening to a normal walk. When they reached the SUV, Cale didn't start it immediately. He sat for a moment, watching the rear view. At 5:56 a.m., a white utility van rolled slowly past the end of the lane towards Sienna's driveway. No logos, no company name. Noah's voice was barely a breath. "They're here for the garage, aren't they?" Cale put the SUV in gear, turning away from the street. "They won't find what they think they will. Not yet." As they drove, Cale's mind worked over the detail that hadn't left him since he first saw the crates. If Damien knew the exact timing of the sweep, then he was either feeding them false security, or he was in even deeper than anyone thought. Either way, the clock was still ticking, and now, they were ahead of it by less than an hour. Chapter 11. They were 3 streets away before Cale let the SUV breathe. The heater pushed thin warmth at the windshield, clearing a crescent of fog where Noah's breath had ghosted the glass. In the rear view, Sienna's block was just a quiet line of roofs and bare trees, the kind of picture you'd put on a realtor's flyer. Normal, if you didn't know what time it was. 5:58 a.m. Cale took the long curve around the neighborhood and slid into a church lot that overlooked the back alleys from a rise. From here, he could see the cap of their garage roof between 2 maples and, beyond it, the slice of Sienna's driveway. He killed the engine and let the stillness settle until the ticking of cooling metal sounded like a clock. Noah leaned forward, knuckles white on the dash. "Are they going to break in?" "They won't need to," Cale said. "They'll have a key or a reason." As if on cue, a white utility van rolled into the driveway below. 2 men climbed out, both in dark jackets, one with a clipboard tucked under his arm like a passport. They didn't hurry. They didn't knock. They went straight to the garage side door, the one Cale had opened minutes ago, and one produced a key ring as casually as if he lived there. The lock turned without resistance. Noah's breath hitched. "Mom, she's not up yet," Cale said gently. "And they don't want the house. Not yet." The door shut behind the men. The van stayed idling, exhaust trailing pale into the cold. Cale raised his phone and took 3 quick photos through the windshield. Van, men, time. He didn't send them anywhere. The phone stayed on airplane mode. The camera roll would keep its own quiet record. They sat without speaking. Seconds stretched and flexed. A jogger appeared at the corner and thought better of the hill, turning away. A garbage truck clanged a street over. At 6:06, the garage door rattled up a foot, then paused, then up another foot. Someone inside working cautiously. 2 plywood crates slid into view on a dolly. The men did not look around. They moved like this was the last step of a plan they'd practiced. "Same markings," Noah whispered. Cale zoomed with his thumb. The stencils were angled away. He could only catch the last 3 characters. Enough to know he wasn't wrong. "Same lot," he said. They loaded 2 crates. Then 2 more. At 6:14, the door rolled down and the van eased away. No rush, no taillights flashing a lie. It turned not toward the freeway but toward the city's old river road, the one that skirted cameras for 3 exits before joining the morning traffic flow like a lazy creek slipping into a river. Noah looked at his father. They didn't even look at the house. "They will," Cale said. At 8. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Even on A-plane, his secure messaging app could still light a banner when it caught a stray whisper from the towers. He glanced down. The contact can't reach the task force lead. Rumor of a sealed op at 0800. Your address is on the list. Don't be there. Under it, almost immediately, the unknown number. Front door at 8 is for show. Back door is for you. Don't let her open it. Noah saw the way Cale's eyes darkened. What? Someone wants us out of the way, Cale said. And someone else wants us alive long enough to watch. He weighed choices the way he'd been taught. Weight against weight, time against risk. Hide until the news broke and hope the pieces fell right. Run and risk losing sight of the only thread that led to the people who'd just stolen the morning from his son's house. Or step toward the danger with his own conditions and his own exits. His decision aligned in his chest like bones setting. "We're talking to him," he said. "Who?" Noah asked. Cale didn't answer. He typed a message to the unknown number instead. "You picked the bridge. You knew the stair creaked. You said no surprises. You want to keep him safe. You meet me where I say. 10 minutes. No tales. You don't see the kid." The reply came faster than seemed possible. "Say where." Cale looked out the windshield. Across from the church lot, a diner flickered its open sign to life. He pictured floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee steam, a morning shift waitress who'd seen every kind of argument under a safe roof. "Riverside Diner," he typed. "East window booth. Your hands where I can see them. You come alone. If I see a badge or a hat, I walk. 10 minutes. A dot blinked, stalled. Then, I'm already 2 minutes away. Don't walk. Cale tucked the phone away and started the engine. "We're going to the diner," he told Noah. "Head down. If you see him, you don't wave." "Who?" "You'll know," Cale said. They rolled into a spot at the far end of the diner lot, nose out. Through the big windows, the counter girl adjusted a stack of menus. The cook behind the pass cracked eggs with the careless grace of repetition. Cale scanned the lot, the street, the rooftops. Life looked like life. He kept his hand on the gear shift anyway. "Stay here," he said. "If something's wrong, I'll tap twice on the window. You drop to the floor and don't move until I open your door. If I don't come back, you walk straight into that diner and ask the woman at the counter to call 911 and Aunt Lee. She'll frown. You'll repeat it. She'll still call." Noah's eyes were wide and steady. "Copy." Cale crossed the lot with a pace that said patient father, not hunted man, and stepped inside. Heat, coffee, and the metallic scrape of a spatula rose around him. He took the end booth by the east window and put his palms flat on the table where they could be seen by anyone who cared to look. He didn't order. He watched the door. The man who came in at 6:27 wore a plain wool coat and a baseball cap with the brim pulled low. He took 2 steps, then stopped where sunlight from the window cut his face on a diagonal. He didn't raise his hands, but he didn't hide them, either. "Donovan," he said. It wasn't until he lifted his chin to meet the light that Cale saw the line across his eyebrow. The same faint scar he'd seen in the grainy video when the hallway light had hit Damien's face the night he leaned over Noah's bed. Damien Voss removed the cap and slid into the opposite side of the booth. Cale didn't speak. He let his silence do the work. Damien placed a phone on the table and turned it face down. A second, smaller device, a pager, of all anachronisms, sat beside it like a coin. His hands were steady. His voice wasn't slick, it was clipped, dry, tired. "You read the note." "I read a lot of things," Cale said. "Then read this right," Damien said. At 8, men with paperwork are going to knock on the front door and say words like warrant and safety and cooperation. While your ex is arguing, a second team is going to come through the back to neutralize any other occupants and sanitize the garage. They'll find nothing. They'll call it Clay. Your son won't be in the house to be accounted for, and they'll call that fortunate. It won't be. Why tell me? Because, Cale didn't say, "You're the one who told my son to ask for extra time. Because you slid me an envelope in broad daylight when you could have dropped it in a mailbox. Because you looked down the street like a man with a shadow instead of a conscience. Damien glanced past Cale's shoulder, out toward the lot. He didn't see the SUV in the far corner. He wasn't looking for it. Because the people who show up at 8 wear the same jackets as the people who took the crates at 6. Different patches. Same boss. Badges, Cale said. Some are real. Some are borrowed, Damien said. All on one payroll. It isn't the city's. The waitress slid 2 waters onto the table as if she'd been summoned by gravity. Coffee, she asked. Please, Damien said, without taking his eyes off Cale. When she left, Cale asked, why the photos of him sleeping? Damien didn't flinch. Because someone on my side wanted proof the kid was in his bed on nights I said he was. A timestamp that cleared him if something burned at 2 a.m. He paused. And because someone on their side thinks hostages keep men like me quiet. Cale's jaw set. Which side are you on? The losing one, Damien said. The tiniest curve lifted one corner of his mouth. It didn't land anywhere near humor. I've been a ghost for 14 months. Fed them what they expected. Fed the other side what they needed. Ran out of ways to do both 3 weeks ago. Then why tonight? Cale pressed. Because a name hit the list for 8 a.m. that wasn't supposed to be there. Damien's eyes finally showed something like heat. Sienna Marlowe. The word hit even though Cale had braced. She doesn't know anything. She knows enough to answer a door and ask too many questions in a righteous voice, Damien said. They don't like righteous voices. They like quiet houses. The coffee came. Nobody touched it. Damien slid the pager across the table. This isn't a relic. It's a receiver for a one-way channel. When it chirps twice, it means a movement window opened. When it chirps once, it means eyes are on your address. It will chirp once at 7:56. You're asking me to trust you, Cale said. After what I've seen. I'm asking you to pick the smaller fire, Damien said. You think I like any of this? I stopped liking any of this when I realized the only safe courier left in the house was a 12-year-old who still says please when he's scared. Silence settled over the table like a sheet. Outside, a city truck rumbled by with a flashing amber light. The cook flipped something that hissed. Cale weighed the man in front of him against the footage that had sent him here. He heard Noah say, he looked scared. I've never seen him scared. He heard the unknown text using phrases Noah had complained about. No surprises, rule words, breadcrumb words. Where does this end? Cale asked. Damien's answer was dry as dust. At your house at 8, if we do nothing. Or at a customs rail yard by noon if we do something and get lucky. And if we do something and get unlucky. Damien met his eyes. Then it ends with you owing me the truth when the kid asks why. Cale stood. The waitress appeared from nowhere, coffee pot in hand. He held up a palm, a small apology. He looked down at the pager, then pocketed it without ceremony. You don't come near him, he said. I won't, Damien said. You don't go near the house. I can't. You stay alive long enough to answer questions later. Damien's mouth twitched again. Work on staying alive long enough to ask them. Cale left cash on the table that covered the coffee and the waitress's patience twice over. Then he walked out, across the lot, into the cold that now smelled like river and exhaust and decision. Noah's eyes searched his father's face through the glass. Cale opened the door, slid in, and handed him the beanie he'd taken off before going inside. Who was it? Noah asked. Someone who doesn't want us at the house at 8, Cale said. He started the engine. And someone who gave me a way to know when they are looking at it. The pager in his pocket was quiet. The clock read 6:39. They pulled out onto the road, not toward downtown, not toward the safe apartment. Cale pointed the hood toward the industrial tracks that cut the city's east side into neat, brutal lines. Somewhere behind them, a white van was an hour lighter. Somewhere ahead, men with paperwork were checking their watches. In the narrow strip of time between, Cale aimed at the one place where the morning could be broken open before it broke them. The sun pushed a dull coin of light against the horizon and slid back under a bank of cloud like it had thought better of the day. Chapter 12. The streets on the east side were still half asleep, a patchwork of warehouses, freight yards, and the occasional all-night diner stubbornly glowing against the gray morning. Cale kept the SUV moving at a steady, unremarkable pace, threading between potholes and rusted rail crossings. In the passenger seat, Noah stayed quiet, watching the scenery change from suburban calm to industrial grit. His fingers rested on the edge of the seat, tapping a slow, nervous rhythm that matched the beat in Cale's head. The pages sat in Cale's jacket pocket, a silent weight. He checked the dashboard clock. 7:04 a.m. less than an hour until the first official visit to Sienna's house. But Damien's voice in the diner echoed in his mind. Front door for show, back door for you. They turned onto Bracken Street, where the chain-link fences rose higher and the signs on the gates were more about keeping people out than selling anything in. The rail yard loomed ahead, a sprawl of parallel tracks and idle freight cars. Beyond the fence, the skeletal frame of a cargo crane cut into the cloudy sky. Cale pulled into the cracked lot of a shuttered auto repair shop 2 blocks away. From here, he could see the side entrance to the yard, one guarded by a small booth and a gate arm, the kind of access point that was supposed to be for employees only. The booth was empty. The gate was up. That's where? Noah asked. That's where they'll move whatever's in those crates if they're not already gone, Cale said. He scanned the lot, mind mapping out cover, exits, angles. He turned to Noah. You stay in the car. Engine off, doors locked. If you see anyone walk straight toward you, hit the horn and don't stop. What about you? Cale reached into the glove box, pulling out a folded baseball cap and a pair of worn work gloves. I'm going to see if we're already too late. Noah's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Be careful. Cale gave a brief nod, then stepped out into the morning chill. The air smelled faintly of wet iron and diesel. He moved down the side street, head down, cap brim low, just another early worker in a place where no one wanted to make eye contact. The gate arm didn't drop as he passed. No alarms. He stepped into the yard, the crunch of gravel underfoot loud in the empty space. Rows of stacked containers created a maze of steel walls. He moved along one side, counting the faded ID numbers stenciled on their corners. Near the third row, he found them. 2 crates, identical to the ones in Damien's garage, sat on a low pallet beside a boxcar with its side door open. A man in a high-vis vest was checking something off a clipboard while another used a pallet jack to edge the crates closer to the door. Their movements were quick but controlled, like they'd done this before and had no reason to rush, yet. Cale stayed in the shadow of a container, watching. The markings on the crates matched exactly. His gut told him this wasn't just a pickup. This was a transfer, moving the goods before anyone could connect them to the address they'd been stored at. He pulled his phone out, still on airplane mode, and snapped 3 silent photos. Then he slid the phone away and eased back the way he'd come. He was 10 steps from the gate when the pager in his pocket chirped. Once. The sound was small, but it felt like a gunshot in his ear. Eyes on your address. Cale's pace didn't change. He walked out of the yard, turned down the block toward the repair shop. His mind was already moving faster than his feet. If they were looking at Sienna's house now, they were early. The 8 a.m. Damien had mentioned wasn't a start time. It was a deadline. Noah's face appeared in the windshield as Cale approached the SUV, eyes wide. Cale opened the driver's door and slid in. They at the house? Noah asked. They are close, Cale said, starting the engine. We have to be closer. To what? To the crates, and to making sure they can't vanish before anyone with sense gets eyes on them. He turned the SUV in a tight loop and headed back toward the yard, pulling into an alley that ran behind the row of containers. From here, they had a partial view of the boxcar and the workers. Cale's phone buzzed, this time a message from his contact. Where are you? The team meant to secure your street just got pulled off it. Orders from above. Above. That word again. Higher than the city. Higher than the people with badges and clipboards. Cale typed back. Crates are in the yard. Boxcar. Row C. Get someone you trust here. No uniforms. ETA 15. Hold them. Cale slid the phone away and looked at Noah. This is going to get loud. If I tell you to move, you move. How are you going to? A sharp clang cut him off. From the yard, the sound of the pallet jack hitting metal echoed. The workers were loading the first crate into the boxcar. Cale stepped out, leaving the door ajar. He walked fast toward the yard entrance, gloves on, cap down, And when the man with the clipboard glanced his way, Cale held up a hand in a casual wave, as if he belonged there. The man didn't return it, just stayed for a beat too long before turning back to the load. Another few steps, and Cale was close enough to the boxcar to see inside. More crates, some smaller, some unmarked, were already strapped down. "You got the manifest?" Cale asked, pitching his voice flat, businesslike. Clipboard guy frowned. "Who's asking?" Cale nodded toward the truck parked across the lot. "Dispatch said to double-check before you seal it. Last time we lost half a day because the order was short." It wasn't enough to fool him for long, but it bought seconds. The man turned half toward the truck, squinting. Cale used the moment to step between the pallet jack and the boxcar, planting himself in the path. "Move," the man behind the jack said, irritation sharp in his voice. "Not until I see the manifest," Cale replied. The two exchanged a look. It wasn't confusion, it was calculation. Cale knew the look. These weren't regular yard workers any more than the men at the garage had been regular contractors. One of them reached into his vest pocket. Cale didn't wait to see what came out. He shoved the pallet jack's handle sideways, sending the loaded crate lurching off balance. The sudden shift drew a curse, the men scrambling to steady it. Cale was already moving back toward the alley, toward the SUV where Noah sat watching with wide eyes. He slid behind the wheel and hit the gas, the tires spitting gravel as they reversed out of sight. From a far end of the alley, a dark sedan turned in, fast. Noah's voice was tight. "Blue." Cale yanked the wheel, cutting through a gap in the fence onto a side street. The sedan overshot, skidding as it tried to follow. Cale didn't give them the chance. He aimed the SUV toward the river road, where the lanes were narrow and the curves too tight for a clean tail. As the city blurred past, the pager in his pocket stayed silent. But Cale knew the quiet wouldn't last. They'd bought minutes, maybe less, before both the yard and Sienna Street were sealed in ways he couldn't break. And somewhere between those two fronts was Damien's smaller fire. They just had to choose which one to run toward.